All right, we're back here at Transfiguration doing the podcast thing with the gentleman. Confession, we recorded a wonderful podcast, a week ago now, and for some reason we had some technical difficulties. I'll fall on the sword for that one.
It's now a very limited edition podcast.
Limited.
It is deleted. It is not even...
Delimited edition.
Yeah, it's very limited to my recycling bin on my computer, which is already recycled. It was a good one. If you want to talk to us about it, you're going to have to call.
Don't call me, though.
Don't call Adam.
Call Matt.
Everyone else's number is in the description to the video.
Matt had strong feelings about justice and mercy.
Yeah, first things first, like and subscribe this video, for goodness sakes. Share it with a friend. This is a great way to evangelize. If you found any good from this podcast, share it. Share it with other people. Share it on your Facebook and Instagram. Share it, like it, subscribe, click that bell button so you can get notified every time we come out with another video.
Help us with the YouTube algorithm. Mash the like button.
Yeah, be an evangelist and help with the algorithm. Yes, like it, watch the whole video. If you stay to the end, maybe we'll give you a shout out. And also, please tell us what you'd like to hear. We don't know what we don't know, so please tell us what you'd like us to talk about. We can talk about it intelligibly or unintelligibly, but we might still talk about it.
Usually the latter.
Yeah, we'll see. Tonight, we are going to talk about what's the point. What's the point of coming to Mass? What is the point of baptizing our kids? What is the point of our faith? Why are you Catholic? Maybe a good one. I listened to, shout out to John Eldridge, came out with a great podcast this last week about the current pandemic, and he, go listen to it, but he talked about, we're potentially living in a state of PTSD because of all the stuff that's happening. And I think we're seeing an uptick, at least here at Transfiguration, of entire families wanting to be baptized and brought into the church. And my theory, although fairly uneducated, but it's a guess, is that this also happens in the hospital. This also happens when people are having serious situations in their life where they're questioning, what is the point of all this? What is the point of life even? And they're trying to get their lives together, and I think I'm all for it. I think it's a beautiful thing. It's been very busy this last couple of weeks, having baptism classes for entire families coming into the church. The church is going to rejoice, and we'll celebrate with you. But having 3 other guys here, 4 tonight total, talk about what maybe their personal reasons why they became Catholic, why they stay Catholic, why they come to Transfiguration, why they bring their kids to church, why do you baptize, what's the point? Podcast from John Eldridge in the description. He has a couple lines that I don't totally agree with about who the human person is, but for the most part, great podcast.
So who's going to start? I'm a cradle Catholic. I don't know. Is everybody else here cradle Catholic?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
But
So yes is all around?
yeah.
Yes is all around. However, y'all are dads as well. So you have a family that you've made specific decisions about coming to church. You've made specific decisions about being a part of Transfiguration. You made specific decisions about having community life here at Transfiguration. For goodness sakes, Jeff and Matt live one house apart from each other.
But
I don't think by
they're not
coincidence.
next door neighbors, though.
Not next door
I
neighbors.
don't think that's by coincidence either.
There's a buffer.
Social distancing?
There's a one-house buffer.
We moved during a pandemic, so we needed the social distancing. I guess I'll kick it off, and I'll get the short and sweet out of the way. No, I think being born into a Catholic family, a practicing Catholic family, and being a cradle Catholic, and I almost pause there because I feel like it could get into almost of a testimonial, 4-part testimonial here, which isn't a bad thing, but obviously keep it short and sweet. No, I mean, I think a lot of always have the questions of why, and it's, I think when you go through Catholic elementary school and Catholic middle school and public high school and university, and it's always the question of when you're growing up, you're like, why are we doing this? Like, yeah, I mean, I understand, I get it. You go to Sunday school, you go to religion class, yeah, I understand, and go through the sacrament classes, and you understand and you get it, but you don't fully buy in, I guess, until you...
Or you're not really choosing it for yourself.
Oh, right. And it is, yeah, just everyone else is doing it, and just because your parents
told you.
You know, and your parents chose to raise you Catholic, and your parents chose to send you to Catholic school.
So, Jeff, what happened after you graduated high school? You went to Winona State for college?
No, and I think that was the culmination of I explicitly chose to continue to go to Mass.
Were you tempted not to?
No, and for the reason of it was just something we did as a family growing up. You always, if you had a Saturday night that some adult beveraging occurred. Yeah, and you always kind of like him and haw, like, oh, should I go to Mass? And praise the Lord that there's a 6 or a 7 o'clock Mass at the cathedral. And it usually, it was just something that you just didn't feel complete. And I think that's, it's still even now, like, you don't feel complete without encountering the Lord on Sunday and receiving Him in the Eucharist. And so, and I think that was a big part of my staying in the faith and almost cementing my relationship with Christ, was just that habitual going to Mass. And I, the first probably month of school at Winona, there was a group called InterVarsity, which is a kind of a non-denominational Christian evangelical group, and they were super welcoming. They had all these fun events on campus. You met folks. It was kind of a great way to meet other people, and no discredit to the Newman Center at Winona State. I don't think in the 3 or 4 years I went there, I don't know exactly where it was, and I didn't ever really go into it. But I knew where the cathedral was because my house, my sophomore year, was right next door to it. And so I would go to the non-denominational events and the praise and worship and the different things. And it just seemed like that was almost like, well, what's the point? And that was a lot of my question to folks that were there, was like, well, what's the point of this? Like, what are we getting out? Not what are we getting out of this, but like, how is this drawing us closer to Christ? And I get that there's very phenomenal speakers and people who have great relationships with Christ, but it just almost felt missing something. But yeah, and I think and part of the raising kids is almost knowing that the one true faith of Catholicism is, that is the reason, because you have a personal encounter with Christ. I mean, you have the ability to do it at any time, anywhere. The Universal Catholic Church is the Universal Catholic Church. Like, it's any Catholic church you go into, you're going to know what's going on, and there's the presence of the Lord there.
It's super universal.
It's ultra. Pew, pew, pew. Ultra.
I don't
know.
We need a soundboard on this podcast, too.
I feel like we've said that numerous times, and Justin still has not downloaded the app onto his phone.
Okay.
For us to... I don't know, where was I? I got sidetracked there. Squirrel.
The Universal Catholic Church.
Oh, man. No, I think that, just from, obviously, each Catholic has their own story and their own reason why they stay with their faith if they're born into the faith, or unfortunately sometimes not.
See, I think that sometimes you're more fortunate actually if you're not born into it. But
Why is that?
Explain.
Because if you're not born into it, but you convert or something later, I think there's a lot of things that as a cradle Catholic it's very easy to take for granted. And like going to Catholic school and stuff, it's expected. Like religion, faith formation is expected, and because it's become normalized, you don't pay as much attention to it, right? Like everybody's doing it. It's just another class to get through. So you don't end up paying as much attention, or at least I didn't. So I don't feel like I got as much. I don't think I was as well formed as like some people now that I see as adults that went through RCIA and stuff. It's like, damn, I've been Catholic for 32 years, and this guy knows a lot more than me. He's only been Catholic for like a minute.
I specifically remember my mom saying at least more than once when I was growing up, "Wow, you're learning so much. I don't even know this stuff." That was back when I was in like 5th grade.
Yeah, I feel like the formation from at least my parents, the formation that they received growing up comparative to what I received, and God willing what my kids will receive, is gonna look a little bit different and hopefully more formative and
Yeah, I think some of this is the schooling part. At least there's a good and a bad. Like you said, Adam, there's a bad part because it just becomes one of the other classes. Because our faith is not just like knowing stuff. I mean, an atheist, could know more than I do about the Bible. The devil knows more than I do about the Bible. The devil has the Bible memorized and knows everything about the Bible. I don't have a clue. Faith is a belief in something else other than just knowledge about stuff. And sometimes some of you guys are hitting on this sentiment. Catholic school kids are like, I've been in education of younger kids for a decade now, and some of them are, no offense, the worst. Some of them are like little, whatever. Oh, I know all this stuff. Well, do you pray? Do you love our Lord? Do you actually care about this? This is why the podcast, what's the point? We can know all this stuff. I can know more than a Muslim about the Quran, but it doesn't make me have any faith in it. What's the point? The point for me, at least, what's the point? And I, hopefully teaching this to our families that are coming into the faith is that I believe Jesus Christ is God. And I believe what he said is truth. And he asked us to do certain things, and he asked us to believe certain things. And I give my life to him as he is my God and my Savior and my Lord. And I mean that in the direct way of he is the Lord of my life. Now, do I fall short of that? Of course. But the point for me, the point of coming to Mass in a number of ways is mostly justice. I owe God that time to go to Mass.
And isn't that such a beautiful thing too? Because it's really real. I mean, we're sitting out on the back patio here tonight. There's not a cloud in the sky, and you look up at the stars, and you're just like, look at how insignificant you are in the face of the world. Fine, there is one cloud. Thank you,
I see a
Adam.
bunch of Elon Musk satellites, but I don't know if I see stars yet.
Fine,
but we got to turn the light off.
But you stare up there, and then you realize what those stars actually are. There are billions and billions of other stars and just depth to the universe out there, and we are so insignificant. And yet there is this Creator who has guided us, called us towards weekly worship out of justice, that we owe it to him. We owe it to him for we owe it to him for our weekly worship for making us. That's crazy. It's just, what do we say? It is right and just.
Mm-hmm. In the Mass, yes.
Every it is right. It is a good. When we say it is right and just, we mean it is right. It is a good. It is good for us. It is a good thing in general, and it is just. It's not just as in fair, but it is just as in we are giving what is owed to someone else, and that someone else is God. We are giving to God what is owed to him, our worship and our life.
And yet in God's beautiful divine providence, he gives us this church, and this church is also not just this universal church, but also this particular church, in that he knows that we need other brothers and sisters to walk this journey with us as well. And if we were all particular churches, meaning unregional, and people from all over would just come to this church and they would be fairly random, or they lived a long distance away, it would be much more difficult to actually share life with them. So not only do we come to Mass to in an act of justice to give God his due and what we owe him, but it's also to share life with fellow Christians, and it's good. It is good for us to be here, just like the Transfiguration. St. Peter said, "Lord, it is good that we are here. Let's put up some tents, some tabernacles, and stay for a while. And let's create a community here that we are part of a family." I every single baptism class I have, I tell the people, we want Transfiguration to be a family of faith. This isn't just a place to just come and get Jesus and peace out, but also we're human. We're not just spiritual beings. We're not just angels. We don't just get fed through Mass. We also get fed through each other, and that is essential. I think it's essential. And so part of this, becoming part of the church is not only to give God his due, because I believe in him. I believe I also believe that he loves me. And I will give my life for someone that truly loves me in a perfect way, like God does. I will give my life for someone who gives their life to me in an imperfect way, who loves me here on earth as well. If they truly love me and they're truly giving their life to me, that's what true leadership is as a dad, is you lay down your life for your family, and you'll be willing to die for them. Obviously, as parents, as dads, we do that in an imperfect way, and I try to remind our daughter that I love you, but God loves you way more. And so it's also this relationship. We want to be for me at least, we want to be a part of this community wherever we go, because I am weak without the rest of my family with me. And that's not just my biological family, but I need the sacraments. I need reconciliation. I need to go to Mass, but I also need brothers and sisters to help us live this faith, to hold me accountable to coming to men's group, to hold me accountable to praying every day. And if I try to do that as a lonesome cowboy, it just fails. It just doesn't work. That's not the way we're made. I often tell people that if National Geographic was like doing, they do those videos on, like, the monkeys of the Appalachians are communal animals, because they live together and they fight together and they survive together and they communicate and all this. If National Geographic was doing a show on us, wouldn't you? I would hope that that's exactly what they're going to say as well. That we're communal people, and when we try to live in isolation and not loving each other, that's when everything breaks down. Adam, what do you got to add there? Why do you raise your kids Catholic? What's the point?
Well, I think there are practical reasons to do it. I also believe that there are eternal reasons to do it. The reason that me and Maureen do it is because we believe it to be true. In the same way that I believe that the stove is hot when the burner is on, and so I don't touch my finger to it, right? In the same way that I teach, right? In that same way I teach my kids about the faith, because to me it's true. It's a fact of life. And I think that as an engineer, I think about a lot of things in life as either like probabilistic or deterministic. And I think that the existence of God is a probabilistic discussion. And there is a lot of evidence that would lead one to believe that there is a God, whether it's a Christian God or not, that there is a God. People have believed in God or gods for ever, basically. But it's a probabilistic discussion, and if it wasn't, there would be no point to having faith. And I think that if you do believe in God, without Jesus, you could be justified in believing that God was either apathetic or not a loving God. But because of the existence of Jesus, I think it becomes very clear that God does exist and that God is a loving God because of the evidence that we have to support the divinity of Jesus and the things that he said and the way that he said them, although he was fully human and divine. For example, when he discusses parables and stuff, right, which are abstractions of the way that humans think about the world, he uses those to explain more complex issues. But for example, when he talks about like, this is my body, this is my blood, he doesn't say like. He says like in all of his parable teachings. He says like. He doesn't say this is like my body, this is like my blood. No, he says this is my body and this is my blood. And we have other supporting evidence of the powers of Christ, right? The miracles, so turning water into wine, raising the dead, walking on water. And I think it's interesting to see that he never used these abilities for his own gain. He always used his abilities over nature or the human condition for the benefit of somebody else, never for his personal benefit. And then, in spite of all these things, he chooses to die on the cross, right? Like, he gives up all of that stuff. He could have had all of the power, all of the money, wealth, whatever in the world, and he gives it all up. There's got to be something else going on with this guy, right? He's like a very compelling character, and nothing that he does in any way, shape, or form insinuates that he is evil or that he is in any way tainted by like a lust for power, which every other person in existence has those faults. So this guy who has repeatedly given us evidence that he has more power than any other person that has ever lived, but he never uses it for his advantage or the advantage of his loved ones unless it is to bring them back to life or enhance their faith. So it's really hard for me, being faced with those truths, to say that, Jesus was just some other guy, you know.
Just some prophet, like some of the other.
So, I think I want to kind of wrap up here, but I do want to ask a question. If y'all have, stopped going to church or had a lapse of faith at any point in your life, what brought you back? Like, what was the thing that brought you back? What was the point? What was the conversion moment? I think for me, I'll let you guys think about it for a second. For me, it was multiple experiences, multiple conversion points, and there's still always conversion points. Lest any of you have the wool pulled over your eyes, I am still not completely converted, as everyone can attest to. But there are multiple points, and some of them are emotionally based, some of them are intellectually based. And I think in some ways, and I see this with a lot of people as well, it was just laziness. It was so much easier to not to kind of just say, like, well, all there's some speculation, there's other people that say this or that, and in my head I kind of just justified not going to church as regularly as I should have. This is in college, and just kind of like, well, part of it was also I wasn't really living that life, and if I believed what I said I believed, I would have to change my life a little bit. So I made some justifications. Well, I don't know if I totally believe in this, but who was I kidding? I wasn't kidding myself. I really just wasn't taking it seriously. I was being, intellectually, just kind of lapsed. I was just trying to justify what I was doing. But then there's also emotional conversions where, times of prayer, and I've done, one of the biggest things for me was I did a 30-day retreat with Ignatian spirituality, and just to contemplate almost all the things that we've talked about tonight, but to contemplate God's, of all the things out there, that God loves me and he calls me his son. And as Adam said, there's also all kinds of evidence that Jesus is God and he actually does call me his son, and I am an adopted son of his, and he does give his life for me in particular, even in spite of all my failures. And also, that was one gigantic conversion. And during the 30-day retreat, they call 1 week Sin Week, where you kind of actually contemplate a lot of your own sin. But then at the end of the week, you're also simultaneously contemplating, in spite of all that, how much God loves you. And in spite of all that, all the angels and saints in heaven praying for you. And so it's not only Sin Week, but it's also like Tissue Week, because everyone's just bawling their face off for a week, going to Mass with like puffy eyes all the time, and confessors not having enough tissues for you because they've ran out. But also just becoming a dad and just seeing the small amount of love I have for Teresa and the small amount of love I have for my wife. And to take that and just blow it up exponentially, blow it up infinitely, and to even contemplate for a very brief moment even that the outpouring, the bursting of my own heart in love for my wife and kids pales in comparison to the bursting of God's love for me that created everything for us. As Matt said at the very beginning, all the stars in the sky are not created arbitrarily. They're created for us, all of them. And a God that loves, as the song says, recklessly as much as he does, it can get me emotional. So there's emotional conversions, and there's also, as Adam said, there's intellectual conversions that I can't just justify what I'm doing anymore. I have to be intellectually, on the up and up. And if I'm going to say I believe what I believe, I'm going to actually try to live it.
I think
what was the question again?
it was initially about
what
conversions or reversions.
Yeah, moments.
Oh yeah.
That you've either, what's the point of all this? You weren't coming, and you've fallen away, and what brought you back?
Sure.
I just want to touch on something that Justin said in regards to fatherhood, and you made the point about being a father and how the love that you have for your daughter has shown you, some semblance of what it must be like to be loved by God, right? But I think, too, like having kids, love you is like, in some ways, their love is far more perfect than my love for them probably is. And there's this Dickens quote that we have on the wall in the kids' bedroom, and it says, "It's no small thing when they who are so fresh from God love us." And I think that there's something to that. They're not tainted by anything. They're not jaded by the world. They don't expect anything from you except for love, and they give their love in return. And that's like the only thing that they know. Like that's the currency that they live their lives on is love, right? And I think that it's so easy for us to lose perspective on like the importance of love and how loved we actually are. And like God sends these people, children, into our lives in some ways to show us how to love, but also to show us his love for us, right? But going back to conversion or reversion stories or whatever, when I got to college, I stopped going to church for some time, and then I lived in, at that time, it was called Selby. I think now it's called Flynn Hall. It's right next to St. John Vianney Seminary at St. Thomas. And I had a couple of friends that pretty much lived in my dorm room, though they didn't go to St. Thomas. And every Sunday night,
There's always at least a couple of those.
they would go to the Father Bear's Last Chance Mass at the SJV Seminary. And they kept trying to get me to go and trying to get me to go. And I was like, nah, not really interested in that. And then one day I just decided to go. It was annoying. They kept asking me to go. And I went. And, Luke Spihar was there in the back of the chapel playing his guitar. Father Bear gave a fiery homily. And while it wasn't any sort of like a complete conversion or anything, I started going to church again after that. But it was also like there was probably a span of, I don't know, 5-6 years between times I went to confession. I went to confession probably when I was a sophomore in high school because it was a requirement. And then I went again for marriage prep. And then I didn't go to confession again until 2016, like a month before my second daughter was born, when I went to the Catholic Men's Conference, again because one of my friends just wouldn't shut up and wouldn't leave me alone. So I went to this thing, right? And that was probably the more complete reversion, where that was a more emotional experience where I was like, I'm going to do this. Like, because I think it's important. I believe that it's right. I believe that it's the truth. And my kids need this, right? And so, like, for me, that was really the culmination of like a 5+ year, no, probably more than that, like almost a 10-year journey from not going to the church because I thought that I was sufficient in and of myself, to then being led back to the church by a community of friends, being hooked on Father Bear, and then we followed him here, right, because he was one to spit the truth. And then it kind of culminated in that Catholic Men's Conference at St. Thomas.
Pre-shout out, but shout out to all those friends that
just don't shut up.
Bugged Adam. But I think that's true here too. The shout out to all those people here at the church that continue to ask someone to come to church with them.
Looking at you guys, you men out there who I've invited to men's group at 6:30 a.m. on Saturdays before, and you just keep saying no, I'm going to keep bugging you.
Are they listening?
I sure hope so.
No.
At this point, probably not.
40 minutes in, they're sleeping.
Same.
Jeff, Matt?
My reversion story, or maybe you could call it a conversion deeper. I don't know what you want to call it, but really three points stand out. One was I was either just graduated high school that summer or back from college one of the years, and I remember exactly where I was sitting in the church, at Immaculate Conception in Eau Claire. for a Saturday 5:15 Mass, bright, sunny, afternoon sunlight coming through during the liturgy of the Eucharist, and I was at Mass by myself. During liturgy of the Eucharist, I experienced this extreme moment of grace where all of a sudden I intellectually and emotionally at the exact same time realized that the God who created the universe, the God of everything, the immortal, immaculate, mighty, holy God had become bread and wine on the altar, and I was about to chew them up. And it was such a crazy, just I don't know how to describe it besides it was just grace smacking me all around, and it really, that is when it clicked for me, that it just clicked, that this is why I'm here. This is what it is all about. This is the God of everything coming down and taking this form of bread and wine, and that's incredible. So that was number one. Number two, I didn't really get into my faith more intellectually, and that I'm a much more intellectual person. I have a hard time experiencing the love of God because I just am more, more logical and just in how I think and how I act. So I have a hard time experiencing love, but I have a very easy time experiencing logical, what would you call that? Just how things fit together very nice and neat and logically. And I didn't really come to this until it was 2012. I had got a book, or 2013, right in there. I had got a book from my mom for Easter called The Pope and the CEO by Andreas Widmer. He was a former Swiss Guard, and then went on to become a successful business leader. And the book is pretty short and sweet, but he talked about the principles that he learned from being a Swiss Guard under John Paul II. And I loved it. I couldn't believe how intellectually beautiful St. John Paul was, and it caused me to go a lot deeper into my intellectual exploration of God and of the church and of its history and its writings, and then specifically St. John Paul II, and just how I get this sense of beauty from it, and you don't really get that elsewhere, or at least I don't really find that in a lot of other places from an intellectual standpoint. When I'm reading something and I'm just like, wow, this makes complete 100% sense. And so that was, and I hadn't picked that book up for about 9 months after my mom gave it to me, but then just one night it was just on my bookshelf, and I was randomly picked it up, and it was one of the best. It was the best Easter gift I've ever gotten, even better than that two-wheel bike when I was 6 years old or whatever. But the third one, then, I was in adoration one time here at Transfiguration, probably 2016, just one evening in the chapel by myself, and I had the 9 to 10 hour, and I was just praying, and well, I call it praying, right? But really, I was sitting there, and my mind was telling God all this stuff, and just going and going and going, and and out of nowhere, my entire being just shook because of the words, or the word, listen, and it was just listen. And it just permeated the depths of everything that I am, physically and spiritually. Like I felt this word, listen, just echo through me. And after that, my mind was silent, just complete stillness in my mind, and it was crazy. The next week, I went to confession. It was during Easter time, and for Father Bear, it was we had 10 priests in the church, and Father Bear, I gone to him, and for my penance, he goes, I want you to go to adoration, or when you're praying, I want you to ask God to give you a word. This was the next week, not even a week later. And I was like, Father, really? He's like, yes. And I said, well, I was in adoration last week and this happened. And he goes, you got to listen. Something like that. And I didn't get to follow up with him on like what, why he reacted that way. But it was, it's like, this is beyond coincidence to just like creepy. And that's, if you don't believe in it, it's just creepy and weird. But it's so like, it fits so beautifully together. And, I really look to those three events of my personal experience in deepening my own, or reaffirming, I guess, maybe reaffirming the faith that I had been brought up to believe as true.
I just wanted to touch on one thing. We were talking about indoctrination, indoctrinating our kids. Is that a good thing, a bad thing? And Matt, you talked about kind of your intellectual journey, reading church teaching and scripture and all of these things. And I think for me, that's the main reason why, like, you ought not indoctrinate your kids in the faith, because really that it's like laziness to do that, because indoctrination is like breaking down the faith into like a set of rules, right? If you can just follow these rules, you're going to be fine. But there's no love in that, and there's no reason in that, right? And there's plenty of history of why the church teaches the things that it does. There's no reason to indoctrinate your kids. You can go and look up, why does the church teach this? Why do we believe in this? How does this lead back to Christ and his love for us? What is he trying to keep us from? What is he trying to lead us to? So I don't really think that there's any reason to indoctrinate your kids. And if you're in any way, shape, or form think that of yourself as an intellectual, shame on you for indoctrinating your kids.
Would be something you do out of fear almost, right?
Yeah, or laziness.
Probably the latter.
Explain laziness. What do you mean by that?
Well, it takes time and effort to go and learn for yourself why the church teaches certain things and the history behind it and the reasons why, like historically things happened, or this stems from this teaching of Jesus and it was extrapolated this way for these reasons. It takes time to digest those things. But your kids also pick up on that time. They pick up on whether or not you're brushing them aside with some platitude or some rote rule or something like that. They pick up on that, and then they see that that's okay, right? Like that's how I ought to go through my life, is trying to find the easy answer instead of actually finding the truth. So I think it's probably mostly laziness.
I was just thinking of the movie The Village, my favorite movie.
Never seen it.
I'm just joking about my favorite.
What's the date? 2002?
It's like my least.
I was going to say, what year was that?
It's like my least favorite movie. The Village would be like 2004, maybe.
Back check.
What's it say?
Google says.
Is that M. Night Shyamalan?
Yeah. Boom.
He's got it.
M. Night Shyamalan.
2004.
Horrible movie. But these families indoctrinate their kids and they keep them separate from the rest of the world out of fear from the rest of the world. It's like the bad version of the Benedict option. The bad version. All right, let's close this out here. Anyone got shout-outs?
Yeah, I got a couple.
Go.
Shout out to Matt Stoltz for nagging me to go to the Last Chance Mass at
Stoltz.
SJB.
Stoltzy.
Serious?
How's he doing?
He was the one, huh?
How's he
Trading cryptocurrency like a boss.
God bless him.
Bitcoin.
Is he really?
Making tons and tons of money doing it. And then Matt Sweeney for being super annoying to get me to go to the men's conference.
How's he doing?
Still super annoying that he did. I still think.
Wait, he is?
I know. I still hold firm that he was very annoying in his attempts to get me to go to the men's conference.
I missed that
Got
guy.
you to go,
I haven't
though.
seen him now in four years or
He's
something.
at Oxford.
Wow.
The
Squeaky
Mats.
wheel gets the cheese. I don't know what
The
gets-
blind,
he
even
gets
the
to go
blind
to that-
squirrel
that,
finds the
uh,
Think it's
occasional
oil.
acorn.
He gets
Think
to go
it's
to that
oil.
bar that Tolkien and what's his name?
Chesterton.
C.S. Lewis and that other guy used to hang out at. It's like the Eagle something or whatever it is. But yeah, he's in Oxford for a while for school, getting his FUD.
Shout out to the Mats.
The Matt S's.
Matt S's. Jeff, you got a shout out?
Nope. Nothing tonight.
Skip and Matt. Skip to Matt, I mean.
Skipping
Matt?
Jeff to Matt. I'd like to shout out to my mom for buying me the Pope and the CEO book.
Link in the description.
Link it in the description.
Probably going to forget.
It's fine. That book, I think, more than any other book, deepened my
Except for maybe the Bible.
The Bible. I've taken that one for granted though, so shame on me. But the Pope and the CEO. She bought me that as an Easter present. I neglected to read it for about 9 months, and then I picked it up randomly one night, and I intellectually fell in love with the church again. So thank you, Mom. I don't know if I've told you that. I probably have, but in case not, thank you much.
Shout out to my nephew, Jack Anderson. He said he listens to the podcast. God bless you, Jack. I love you. He is going to school. He's going to college to be a cop. So he's also thinking about the seminary. So pray for him. And Jack, I love you very much, my godson. So I think I get some kudos to try to get to heaven if you actually become a priest. But thanks for listening, Jack.
Just riding on his coattails.
It's like a referral bonus.
Hey, that's also I'm trying to find a shout out, but I guess it's going to have to wait. But someone shared one of our podcasts, and it just blew up and got about 900 views in a couple days. So just another
Which podcast?
reminder to share the podcast if you find some benefit in it. Share it, like it. Send it to friends and family. It was a podcast Father Erickson and I did about conversion stories, similar to what we talked about tonight. But someone from Blessed Is She shared it on their blog, and all of a sudden, boom, it got like 700-800 views in like a day or so. So shout out to, I forget her name now, but she came to give a talk at Transfiguration. Did a great job.
Was it Nell?
Nell, shout out to Nell. Come on, Jeff, you're
I don't
killing me.
Nell Alt?
Shout out to Nell Alt from Blessed Is She for sharing our podcast. She must have a gigantic audience because she literally didn't even say who the podcast was. She just put a link at the end of her blog. So she must have thousands of people reading her blog. So if anyone else, even more popular, wants to share our blog, go ahead. Anyone. Joe Mauer, you want to share it? That'd be great. Remind you to subscribe, hit the bell button so you'll be notified whenever a new podcast and everything else comes out. And then come to Transfiguration. Be a part of this family. We'd love to have you, and we'd love to get to know you and be part of this family and raise our kids all together and hopefully be in heaven together as well.
Be
God
careful
bless.
around Justin, though, because he scares little kids.
Yeah. Thanks, bro. I'm just going to cut that out.
You better try that ending again.
Little
there.
Julia got frightened today. I was trying to be funny. She clearly needed a nap. Let's be honest. She needed a nap. So I'm just going to push stop here because we already got an ending. Thanks for ruining it, Adam. God bless.